Yeah, I think we can put that on pause. Great record. Okay, put that on pause. I have been getting back into my Marvel Cinematic Universe stuff with my soundtracks. It's been fun. This may actually be a truncated show because we've got ourselves some technical issues. This was going to be a show that was going to be driven mostly by Mr. Mark Serby. He wanted to talk about Game of Thrones. We want to talk about entitlement. We want to talk about the way that fans have been reacting over the last couple of weeks. Oh, hang on a second. Bear with me. Someone wants to just confirm. Cancel. Bear with us, everybody. We are trying to get Mark Serby on board for the show because, well, that's the way it works. Oh, hang on a second. We are trying to get some technical issues sorted out. Oh, hang on, 78. There we go. So we may have Mark joining us very shortly indeed. But it looks like we may have to try and find a different alternative to Google because this is just a nightmare. Just a way of trying to get people involved and trying to get the way that we seem to have so many issues with Google Hangouts. So if anybody is aware of any alternative group streaming, yeah, because rather annoyingly, we did have a show. Well, there was a show with all sorts of technical issues, and I was also feeling very much under the weather. So we decided I was just doing a quick thing on Periscope, and we had a lot of response, and we had lots of people kind of joining in and taking part. So, yeah, Twitch is one thing, but I think Twitch very much deals and wants to deal with creating a marketable channel. So you have to be very much of kind of constantly pushing for super chats and super people taking involved and all sorts of stuff and nonsense when it comes to Twitch. It's just slightly awkward. Now, I think he is trying to sign in at this point. I see a window open. So you never know. This could actually be working, but fingers crossed. Anyway, we'll dive in and we'll get through as much as we possibly can. Oh, well, there's Mark. Don't know if we can hear him. Hello, Mark. Oh, there's sound. Can you hear me? Hello, Mark. He's looking very confused. It's got to be said. Mark? Okay. Bear with us a second because I think we're going to have to message him. Okay. We're going to have to see what happens. Mark, we can hear. We can hear him. But he seems to not be able to hear us.
I can hear you now.
Oh, there you go. In other words, you could hear us for the last 5 minutes. You just wanted to make me look like a pillock. I appreciate it.
I was waiting for you to slag me off. That's all it was.
It would never happen. It would never happen.
I'm double checking. That's all.
Yeah. We would like to welcome to the Hangout Mark the Mountain Serby, who Kind of, yeah, he wanted to prompt this particular episode of the Hangout, Talkin Con, Cup of Tea with an Englishman in San Diego, to talk about a show which 3 weeks ago he was very excited about talking about. And then the last 3 weeks happened. And all of a sudden, maybe not so enthusiastic. Not so much necessarily about the way that the show's going, but the way that fandom is getting very entitled. Things are getting very heated. Online discussion is getting very passionate. I mean, okay. Mark, introduce yourself. Welcome along to the Hangout. And yeah, dive in, mate. Hello? Oh, good grief. He's now frozen on a grinning... Oh, dear Lord. He seems to have vanished again. We are going to have so much fun today. Let's have a look at this. One or two people jumping in on the chat box. Hello there, everybody. Welcome on. Michael P., good morning from Colorado Springs. You got Aaron Neighbors. Hello. Hola from sunny, rainy San Diego. Oh, it's good to have some rain in California every once in a while. Let's have a look at this. Omar Hassa, who's going for Fun Day tickets this Wednesday? Well, if you've got 3 to 4 seconds available, go for it. Because, you know, it's that kind of thing. Mark, are you there? Because you're very glitchy.
I'm here. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, but your picture keeps glitching.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, you were saying that I'm a mountain. Honestly, I feel like I've climbed a mountain to even get in to do this. It's been a bit of a nightmare. I've tried every possible browser, every possible login possible.
Fun and games.
Yes, yes.
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, let's have a look at this. Yeah, we had a picture for half a second. Andrew Dickinson, but you can broadcast on YouTube as well, can't you? Well, yes, if we could. I think that's kind of the problem. That's was struggling. Omar Hassa is saying you wish 3 to 4 seconds, more up to 3 hours. 3 hours preparation for buying tickets for Funko Fun Days. 3 to 4 seconds when they sell out. So, you know.
How many tickets do they sell, just out of curiosity?
Looking at that room, I'd say it's a good 1,300 capacity room.
Okay.
It's a good sized ballroom. Being DJs, we work on size of ballrooms and how. Yeah, we work on capacities.
Where's the DJ booth going? That's all we need to know.
There is no DJ booth, or they have. I don't think they've had one recently.
Well, in which case we won't be getting tickets, will we, Leonard? Because you and I only sit at the back of a room and criticize the DJ. That's all we do.
As professional DJs, yes, that's what we do. I have been to a Funko Fun Day. I only went for the first half because I then went back into a queue for Hall H, and I went to get my wristband. It's a lot of energy. It's a lot of fun. It's worth going, especially if you are a Funko fan. If you're going for the freebies, fine. If you're going for the atmosphere, even more so. I would love to work out a way for them to really kind of make it for those kind of fans, the ones that are willing to jump up on stage and eat entire cans of corn and kind of generally get into the vibe of it and aren't there just to kind of get the freebies. Admittedly, I did kind of go for the freebies, but I think I went there just for I went for the experience more than anything.
But isn't eating the corn some freebies?
This is true. And as somebody who has had bowel surgery, eating corn is very wise. I've been informed by my by my specialists. So, you know, But the thing is, as I've also been informed by 5 people over the course of the past 7 days, I can eat entire cans of corn because I'm fat. They didn't even just kind of get around it this time. They just basically said, okay, here's your cosplay. You need a Big Lebowski overcoat. You need a beard. You need a blonde wig and a hammer. You're sorted. That's what I got told. That is my cosplay from here on in. Terrible. Right, we were talking about Game of Thrones. It's proven interesting to watch how the fandom has reacted over certainly the last 7 days. I mean, certainly the way that the show has been received. It was interesting actually, because I'd say around episodes 2 to 4, people were still accepting of the show. People were watching it. There were 1 or 2 issues in terms of pacing, but nothing was really kind of that people weren't jumping on the show. It took the last episode for everyone to just turn on Game of Thrones on a dime, it felt. What has been your take on not only the show, but also the way that the fans have reacted?
It's been interesting with the show, certainly, because obviously last weekend's show, that episode, I watched it 9 a.m. Monday morning, UK time, sat there watching it and thought, actually, do you know what? I quite like this. This is, this is sort of the big blockbuster ending that you kind of want. And then I sat with it throughout the rest of the day and started to think about it and started to think, I don't know if this is the way it's properly going. It feels wrong. It feels, I mean, obviously we have the whole Daenerys thing, and I think that's what sat wrong with me eventually after thinking about it and thinking about where we've been with the rest of the show in terms of story arcs and things like that. And I came to the conclusion that by 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the evening, I'm like, yeah, it's not that it was a bad episode. I don't think it was a bad episode. I just don't think it served the characters that either we love or hate. Let's not forget it. We do hate a lot of characters in there, but we love to hate them. It just felt like it was just gone, just throw everything up in the air and see what happens. It really felt like nothing was really coming from the pen of George R.R. Martin. I know it's not, obviously.
It clearly isn't.
Yeah, but at the same time, he's been involved. He's told, the showrunners, show writers, what he's written in the book. So it's clearly coming from that area. But it feels...
Do you feel then George R.R. Martin would have written this kind of twist, especially for the character like Daenerys? That it's a case of the defense has been for her character that she hasn't been the homicidal, scorched earth kind of revenge driven character. But at the end of the day, she is on a path of revenge. She has been from episode 1. Her family has been from episode 1, that path of revenge. We have seen strong episodes with her so far where she has shown compassion to the little people. I mean, I think a lot the way I see Game of Thrones is basically about the upper class and the upper tier and everybody else. And it's this bunch that are fighting for the crown. And the rest of us, the 99% are collateral damage. And we definitely got that in this last episode. Up to now, I think Daenerys has shown that she can show compassion for the people on the ground. But I think when she is given a lot of emotional and psychological trauma, such as the betrayal by Varys, with the execution that took place at the end of episode 5. At the end of the day, That's and the makeup I think showed a lot of what she was going through. She was drawn, she was gaunt, she was in the post battle scenario where nobody was approaching her. She was on her own. She is being isolated, and you stick a character in a corner there, that's where they're the most dangerous, and that's what came through for me. For myself, as somebody who has not been as invested as a lot of people, I am very much a casual viewer. I'm someone who watches very much from oh, Caroline's watching it, I'm going to watch it, if you know what I mean. I'm very much a one distance removed. It didn't seem too much of a stretch for her to just go, no, my best friend said burn the lot, here we go.
That's fine. I mean, I don't want to focus just on Daenerys' storyline. I mean, you've got to think about Cersei's storyline as well. You know, because she's been, and apologies in advance for using this word, but because she's been such a bitch all the way through, you want her to have that comeuppance. You want it. You're desperate for it. You're desperate for somebody to just stab her through the heart or something. And for them to go out like that.
That was a bit of a denial. Yeah,
but there was bits like that all the way through, and that's what it just didn't feel right.
The way that Jamie got treated as well.
Yeah, exactly. You know, there's a man who had a brilliant redemption story arc through like 3 seasons, where you're like, okay, I really like this guy now. I see what's happening. Blah blah blah. And even in a couple of episodes previous, where he saw Bran and Bran saw him to a certain degree, obviously, and they were like, oh, okay. And then to have that waste of an end, it was like, this is point. Why would you even bother with that character then? It doesn't make sense for you to write something like that. Yet you wrote brilliantly in 3 seasons for this character, and you wanted something. Actually, maybe most people wanted something good for him, and it doesn't happen. It felt like everybody, certainly in this last episode, has been underserved, apart from Daenerys, who has now been overserved with this burden of the Mad Queen and has now taken over from Cersei. And I know, obviously, George R. R. Martin has said, it's based on War of the Roses, it's based on, a lot of English history as well. But at the same time, I don't want to say you've got to serve the fans, but you could naturally see that story arc. And I think everybody before this season was starting was going, right, okay, I think we're going to see X on the throne. I think we're going to see Y as so-and-so. And I think we're going to see them as, and the only thing that really has come to a point where I think most people would have guessed is that, the best actor in it, really, Peter Dinklage, is now the Hand, and you're like, well, yes, that's where we saw it going. And you just want the next pieces of jigsaw to fit, but it's not.
I think for myself, as somebody who's been, like I say, watching one step removed, my problem with the season that we've had, this last season, is because it is, 7 episodes? Very little has happened.
Yeah.
Very little has happened. I mean, Omar Hassa has jumped in on the, by all means, comments. Do let us know what you're thinking, and let us know if I'm not touching base, if Mark's getting it completely wrong, which, I mean, the pair of us, we could be completely off base. By all means, do let us know. Omar Hassa, when the bag's under the eyes is the best they can do, maybe it's time to add an extra episode. For myself, it hasn't felt like a drama. You can actually kind of add up the major beats of the episodes on one hand. And in that regard, it's bad writing. Considering you've got an hour and a half to play with, I don't want to compare to other shows, but let's do it, because that way you can talk about how other shows have dealt with drama, writing, pace, content, and the moving forward of character. And for myself, the dictionary definition of that is Battlestar Galactica. They crammed an entire film's worth of stuff in the space of an episode. We have got episodes the length of films, and yet we are getting 40-minute worth of stuff in those episodes. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I do you know what? I'm in complete agreement. And I tell you what I think it is. I think it's the dialogue. I think we're missing really interesting dialogue like we had in previous seasons, which was coming obviously from the pen of George R. R. Martin, whatever else. But dialogue is the be all and end all of this show. You know, it's great that the dragons and whatever else and, you know, the fighting, but it's the dialogue that really crackles along with this. You know, you think back to some of the brilliant bits, you know, like the Red Wedding, just before that's all kicking off, there's some brilliant dialogue in that. There's brilliant dialogue when Joffrey dies as well, things like that. It felt like, I mean, yeah, there's really no dialogue, really interesting, really crackling dialogue that makes you go, oh, can't believe they said that. That's a sharp point.
Is it
in this series?
The script is too much of, and the Indians take the fort, and then just hand over to the SFX team, and then let's just have this happen?
Yeah, it could well be. It could well be. Yeah, it's a good point.
It's just, it's felt like everything that we've had so far has come from a source where there's a writer to go to. There's character, there's development, there's story, there are the books, there's the source material. This has felt like they have looked at an empty whiteboard and gone, we haven't got anything. We've got nothing. We've got the beat. It's like they've had a meal with George R. R. Martin about the beats, but nothing about why those beats connect.
Yeah.
And I think that's, I mean, but then again, I'm trying to work out, and this is where I'm going to lead back to what the point of the Hangout is. It's about the way that fandoms interact with the properties. It's the way that we all come together as a community, whether we are deserving of the influence that we give back to the producers and shows like this.
Yeah.
Is it down to us as fans to provide those beats? All that we have provided so far on sites like Nerdist, all these, you know, comicbook.com, we are almost like filling in the gaps. But we've been doing that with stuff like Avengers, MCU, you know, all the various properties where these speculations, and we are providing the narrative. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, I know some people like that. I know some people like the blanks being filled in. But for me, the ambiguity of certain things is what I like about it. The, you know, the not knowing, or the standard day-to-day life where you think, well, this is a little bit dull. You know, they just stood around having a drink or something. I think things like that enrich a show so much more. So for fans, I think any show that is this big is always going to have a problem, because there's always going to be people who take against it because they're forgetting who the people who made it big. Yes, but that's always going to happen when you're a popular show. That's the nature of the beast. But you have to move on. And if you want to be a popular show, you have to bring in the casual viewer. You're a casual viewer, Leonard. You know, whether you think about it or not, you are a casual viewer. Myself and your wife are the hardcore fan base to a certain degree. But then there's even more, you know, the people who have read the books and devoured everything that Martin said, and, you know, even the showrunners and everything else like that. There's even more there. So it's very difficult for them to serve everybody. You know, this is the thing. I think, you know, I kind of think of the way that this last season has gone is very reminiscent as the last season of How I Met Your Mother. Everybody loved that show. You know, that show was so much fun, and that last season was absolutely terrible. You know, and it kind of reminded me that everybody was talking about How I Met Your Mother and whatever else. And then the last season, everybody went, sorry, what is happening now? How is this even a good series? How is this even a good episode? You know, and that's how it's feeling now. There's, you know, that, you know, the water cooler moment doesn't happen anymore. It just doesn't, unfortunately. That sort of died off when Lost finished, and you know, Game of Thrones is very much like Lost in that people were talking about it constantly, week after week. Even when it wasn't on, there were things written. There was people doing brand new podcasts when it was just a new thing. People were talking about it for a whole year, and then when it comes back, people talking about it again. And that's the same with Game of Thrones. And then when it got to the end of Lost, everybody felt underserved. I mean, you know, I say everybody, I imagine there's people out there who liked it, and I'm certainly in the other camp, which is I watched it all in one go. I never watched it when it was on. I actually don't like the thing, but I understand how people can be annoyed about it. And I think that's what's happening with Game of Thrones, is that I think people are going to look back on it and go, so close yet so far to actually sticking that landing of being such a brilliant show, that it's just not working at the moment. But we've still got one episode, could be all tied up.
Well, okay. Well, there's the thing. I mean, I think the comparisons that I've been seeing online. I mean, How I Met Your Mother, that's a new one. I haven't heard that one before. But I think the thing with How I Met Your Mother is everyone recognizes that that entire last season was a misstep. That it served no purpose, and you could actually close the series down from the end of the season before.
The same with Scrubs.
Yeah. This is an interesting scenario with Game of Thrones, which is mirrored with two shows, which is the conversation I've seen online. Number one, like you say, Lost. That it showed potential and it showed the imagination. It was galloping along nicely. And then literally 5 yards from the finish line, the horse stumbled and fell, and it just collapsed right at the end. It said, like I say, a lot that there was still so much goodwill for the show and so much positive conversation about the show before last weekend. It was last weekend, it was the last episode that really did just turn everyone on a dime. The other episode or the other show that I've been seeing a lot of conversation about, Dexter.
No.
We're talking a show which had all of this arc and all of this story and all this character, and then in the final episode, it just, to use the common vernacular, jumped the shark. And it just did it right at the it just does it at the very end, and it can just sour the whole thing. Let's go to a couple of comments. Omar Hassa, it seems like they wanted some great cinematic battles and kind of forgot what Game of Thrones is. It's not a Steven Seagal movie with action and nothing else. The drama, backstabbing, and politics is the show. The action is only the candy coating.
Yes,
absolutely. Karma Savage, interesting mention on dialogue, because I'm rewatching the seasons and came across the wondrous dialogue between Jamie and Brienne in the tub. Totally missed that important information on Jamie. Indeed, for myself, that last episode, the most interesting part of the entire episode was when Peter Dinklage and yeah, you could tell how casual I am. It was with the final meeting of the brothers before he sent him off to meet Cersei and sent Jamie away. That meeting in the tent, that was an interesting dialogue, because it was a way these two characters that have had so much history, that have had so much of a dynamic, and it has been a dynamic, and I know that sounds like an overserved word, but dynamic is definitely what those two have had in terms of the relationship with, but not only with each other, but with their sister Cersei. You have to remember they are a family, and it's just been I found more interesting than seeing a dragon strafing streets.
Yeah.
Admittedly, I did actually find that moment with Dany on the wall looking down, and that the neurons snapping behind the eyeballs, and just that click when she just snapped. I think I said when the season started that I felt that Dany was going to be the big bad of this season. I think what most people have responded to and hated the most is how quickly she got there.
Yeah. I think that's been the problem, hasn't it? Is that it was in that snap, as you said. There was nothing else to it. It was just that snap, and that was it. And she changed.
Yeah. Michael P. HBO was more than willing to give them more time and episodes. This is true. I think if you saw the behind the scenes stuff, certainly the last episode, what they actually poured into that episode, which, to be fair, I actually wondered why so much of it was practical. We're at a moment now where you can save time and effort by doing it digital. And you know what? If it looks good and it's convincing, do it. Because like we've said and we discussed here on the chat, the dragon coming round and strafing the scorpions, that wasn't that well. Okay, fine, whatever. The whole strafing of the city, okay, fine. That's not what interests us, I think.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is what's concerning a lot of people about the new Star Wars films. Because if anything, Star Wars is not bang, bang, pew, pew. It's not. While we all thrilled to the Battle of Yavin and all of that, we still only go back and we talk about the relationship between Luke and Leia, Han and Leia, all the other characters, the dynamics and the interplay between them all. On the back of these episodes that we have seen, which at the end of the day have been 5 to 6 to 7 film productions, they don't know how to do. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to do it.
It's interesting. I kind of want to, I know we've been talking about it for a while and there might be people who don't watch Game of Thrones, but I want to finish on something that I've kind of been thinking about over the past week. And that is, obviously, there's so many people watching Game of Thrones now. It is such an iconic pop culture brand. You know, it goes beyond the nerd brand. It's such an iconic piece that everybody's watching it. It's possibly the last time we're going to see a TV show like this bring so many people together. Because of the way that we watch TV shows now, you know, Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, or whether it's, you know, on NBC or ABC or BBC or, you know, whatever it is, I don't foresee in the future us getting tentpole TV shows like we're getting now. I mean, yes, we know Lord of the Rings is coming and things like that, but I feel like Game of Thrones is maybe the end of an era. Could I be wrong?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I think not in terms of the actual storytelling. I think you may be wrong there. There are, like you say, other shows that we will get hyped up about. We talk about Star Wars being the great trilogy, and then people talk about Lord of the Rings being the great trilogy, and the great trilogy is always coming down the pipe. The great series is coming down the pipe. The next MCU will come down the pipe. We will have stories. That's how we grow and develop as a culture. So that I don't have a problem with. Like you say, I think maybe the end of an era of how those stories are delivered. But we've had this before with the end of network television, moving on to cable onto streaming. I think that we may be at that element of a streaming era, but I think there'll always be something else. I think there'll be something that will capture our imaginations, and I have no problem with that because it just allows us to have stuff to keep living for, frankly.
I think you just saying that the problem we've got now is that any TV show needs room to grow its audience. You know, there's going to be a few TV shows that are instantly going to get an audience. There's no problem, but they're not going to get that Game of Thrones last season audience figure. It's just not going to happen from a first season. But the problem we're getting now is that TV shows that are debuting on, whether it's cable or whether it's network or whether it's on Netflix or whatever, are on average lasting 2.1 seasons. Now think about that in terms of Game of Thrones, 2.1 seasons. So that's the first episode of, you know, the third season, I guess. Were you really into it? If you think about when you came to Game of Thrones and really got into it, were you in by that point? I mean, I'll happily say that no, it was the whole of the third season that really got me hooked. Yeah. I could have been switched off by then. You know, Game of Thrones could have been switched off by then if it was now in this new era.
Correct. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
That first season and a half, season 3/4 was turgid. That could have gone in a heartbeat, but it served a purpose for the brand. and also for the network. And that's what I think Game of Thrones has done. It's served it's something, so like you say, it's a tentpole. It's GOT. It's something we can put an entire branding around. Just to quickly go back to the point you said about the end of an era in terms of streaming, but two things. Number one, we got Omar Hassa saying, if people want to watch, they will find a way. My cousin has never missed an episode of Game of Thrones, and he's never had HBO in his life. If the content is good, fans will find a way. Yes, okay. That's number one. Number two, we talk about the evolution of content and delivery, and that we are now in a period of delivery that's been provided to us. We are now in the streaming era. In that case, how can you explain Line of Duty?
Yes.
It's a BBC show. Is it BBC? ITV?
Yes.
BBC.
BBC? ITV?
It's a network show on the UK. Listen, which up to the last season, I'd never even heard of. It's only like the most highest viewed show on network television in a decade, but I hadn't seen it. But anyway, if good stories will always find a home, and I think they'll always find an audience. But here's where I want to change the conversation now, because this week has shown something else. Off the back of lots of other franchises and lots of other conversations where the fans have reacted and the creators have responded in kind. Should art, in terms of a television show, a film, whatever, should it serve the audience? Should it react to a petition?
No, of course not. No, absolutely not. You know, I think about all the TV shows that I watch, which are not nerd centric, you know, pop culture. And I think about the greatest show that, certainly for me, the greatest TV show ever made is The Wire. Could you imagine if that had a petition to say, yes, we really hated the second series, can you redo it? I mean, it wouldn't compute, because then you wouldn't get the third and whatever else. So no, you know, I know what people are trying to say. Look, this is shit. Can you redo it? But then it's just not going to happen. You know, no. When has there ever been something like that has been listened to in terms of TV shows? There hasn't.
Admittedly, the conversation has been that it's not. I mean, the fans are saying that they understand that it's not going to get remade. It's not going to be reissued. It's not going to be reshot, yada, yada, yada. This is a way for us to vent our displeasure about something to the powers that be. But I'm just wondering how futile that is. In terms of not only I appreciate and understand the investment that somebody has put in at this point to see a show, and to then see their characters not be served in the way that they want in the final stretch. But to then demand, and that is what they are doing. They are demanding a retribution. I struggle. Because I've made this point on my Twitter and on my timeline so many times. At the end of the day, if you feel that you can let go of something, do it. If you love something, let it free. Yeah. It's a case of an artist should not be dictated to by his audience. The artist creates, the audience consumes.
Yes.
Otherwise, it turns into, and I'm gonna. Is it the Rose and the Thorn? Rose and the Crown? No. Oh God Almighty! Help me out. The name of the film. There's a film about Leonardo da Vinci and his commission of the Sistine Chapel, and it's basically the church demanding and saying, no, we're paying you. You do this. At which point Leonardo da Vinci goes, no. Oh, Michelangelo, sorry. No, I'm doing this. This is my artwork. This is my art. This is what I bring to you. I am very much on Michelangelo's side.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Could you imagine if there was a petition online and it was listened to by this director, and he went and remade a TV show that came back after 30 something years, and they went and remade it in line with how standard fans wanted it. I'm not talking about the hardcore people, I'm talking about the ones who sort of enjoyed the original show, but this, when they brought it back, they were like, oh, I don't know what's going on now. Think about this. Could you imagine if they went back and reshot Twin Peaks The Return and David Lynch sold out and decided to go mainstream? That's not who David Lynch is.
Yeah.
That's not who these people are. You're right, Leonard. You know, that's not who Da Vinci was or anybody like that. This is why they do their job like that. Sometimes they get it wrong. That's just the nature of the beast. But they're there for a reason. They're there because they've written or they've produced or they've directed good content along the lines. You know, there are great showrunners and TV writers who have turned around and said, right, 3 series and we're out. That's it. I know the ending and it's only going to be 3 series. That's brilliant.
Legion.
Unfortunately. Yeah, exactly. Legion. You know, The Juice. The Juice is one of the best TV shows on TV at the moment. But it's the same, you know, I kind of go back time and again to Supernatural. Supernatural should have ended. Exactly. People know when to end it. Supernatural is a prime example. Should have finished at the end of season 5. Brilliant, brilliant ending. Sadly, we're now on seasons, it's going to be season, 15, 16. And it's like, well, am I still watching this show? You know, there are people out there who know the job. And then when they get given some more money, here's some more money to do 27 more episodes. They go, okay, we'll do it, but we've no idea what we're doing.
Yeah. Just a couple of clarifications. Name of the Rose was not something I said, but I'm a big fan of that Sean Connery film.
That's a great film.
Yes, yeah. Agony in the Ecstasy was the film that I was thinking of. Yeah. If you do get the chance to watch that, I think it's something that needs to be shown a lot at the moment because just to kind of, yeah. But I think also, something I mentioned in a Periscope before we came on air. This isn't actually a new phenomenon. Someone posted a quarter-page or half-page variety advert, which was funded by the fans for a film that they had heard the rumors of the death of a character, that they felt it was a bad idea, that it would sink not only the character but the franchise. The fans would riot. Hollywood would be in flames. Homes would be burnt. It would just be a complete and utter nightmare. And the studio needs to reconsider. The film was Star Trek II: Wrath of Khan. It was the fans of Star Trek that felt that Spock shouldn't die. This is not new. This is not new, but this seems, I'm wondering, this, I know this isn't a new phenomenon, but this feels new. This feels like Hollywood is actually listening, and that's a bad idea.
Yeah, I think, do you know what? Obviously, we don't want to stay on this too much, but it moves into what we're going to talk about now, which is very nicely, because I saw, you were saying, obviously, you saw that advert. I saw an advert. Somebody had retweeted this, and it was, once again, fans who had put money together to put an advert in. I don't know if it was Variety or Entertainment Weekly or something, to say how disappointed they were that Michael Keaton had got the role of Batman. And it was and it said, how has Mr. Mom got the role of Batman? And yet, obviously, now we know that, you know, incredible pieces of work. We're now dealing with that same thing now that Robert Pattinson has what we believe.
You skipped one. Heath Ledger.
Yes, Heath Ledger as well. Yes. It seems like the Batman fans, and I'm one of them. I'll happily admit, you know, I'm a huge Batman fan. It seems everybody was up in arms about Michael Keaton. Everybody was up in arms about Val Kilmer. Nobody was up in arms about George Clooney. So, I think we need to take a step back in being up in arms about certain things and realizing, yeah, we got it wrong with Keaton and Val Kilmer, but we got it, and then, yeah, we got it wrong the wrong way around for Clooney as well. But yeah, we're now seeing it with Robert Pattinson. Oh no, he's not good enough, and he's the Twilight guy. Twilight finished 10 years.
Even Christian Bale got a fair amount of heat.
Yeah, he did, absolutely. Yeah, people were like, "What, the guy from Empire of the Sun?" Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but we're getting this with Robert Pattinson. This is the Twilight guy. It's like, no, that was 10 years ago. If you've seen him in any films recently, if you saw Good Time, you'll realize he was channeling Al Pacino. If you saw him in Metropolis, you'll realize he was channeling some of David Lynch's greatest work. He really has.
Just amazing.
Yeah, you really will realize that this guy has moved on so much, and that, he can play that darkness. He's no longer the shiny vampire. He's a proper actor. Not that he never was. It was just unfortunate that that's what broke him out. And I know obviously he was in Harry Potter as well, but I genuinely think it's a really interesting piece of casting, and I think DC/Warner Brothers are making some really interesting pieces of casting with their properties now. It's great that Avengers has made $1 billion and whatever else, but Warner's and DC are going out there and going, you know what? Let's just do our own thing now. They've forgotten Justice League. They're going, no, that didn't work. Let's do something else. Let's do Aquaman and make it bonkers. Let's do Joker and bring in Mark Maron. And you go, what? Mark Maron's in a film? Okay, right, fine. And now they've gone, yeah, we're going to put Robert Pattinson in as the Batman, and we're going to have Matt Reeves direct. And you go, okay, well, it seems slightly weird, but it's in their new mindset of trying different things. And most of it is, well, I think all of it is working, to be honest with you. I love Wonder Woman, but Wonder Woman is now their main tentpole film. It's not straying far from the standard formula. What's straying from the formula is Joker. He's probably going to be this new Batman as well, and he's going to be Birds of Prey as well.
Yeah. Let's kind of steer it a little bit towards the kind of what the hangout and the podcast is about in terms of conventions and the audiences at shows. We're talking about this reaction to Robert Pattinson. I mean, what do you think the reaction would be, say, in Hall H, if he's brought out on stage?
Well, I don't, you're preaching to the choir there anyway. That's the thing. So you've got to be very careful. It's like showing a film at Cannes and it getting a standing ovation. Every film at Cannes gets a standing ovation. So, but I think regardless of your age, I think it's an interesting choice, as I've said. And if you've seen him do these other films, you'll realize this is a really good choice. It's a really interesting choice, as long as he's served with the right dialogue. Heck, you and I, Leonard, have been in Hall H when they've announced certain films. 2 films starring Matt Smith, one of them only came out recently, where it's got applause. And you think, hang on, has nobody seen Matt Smith's real work? The man's a bit wooden, So bringing him out is going to get the applause because people are there to see that. It's the casual viewers you've got to get. That's the thing. And that takes us back to obviously the Game of Thrones thing and whatever else. It's the casual people you've got to get in there. And that's what Marvel have done over these past 10 years. They've got the people who sit at home and really don't go to the cinemas to go, you know what? I'm going first day. I'm paying my money. That's what's got to happen now. And I think with Robert Pattinson, he's a name. People know him. And unfortunately, it is because he's a vampire. Was a vampire, obviously. But I think it is, I genuinely think it would be a welcome reaction.
We've got Andrew Dickinson who's jumped in. He feels that Pattinson would get a mix of boos and cheers. Game of Thrones won't be at San Diego Comic-Con or any other convention this year due to the security risk of the crowd charging the stage. I don't think the cast would be at risk. I think the writers and the showrunners would be keeping their heads well and truly down. I think it's just so curious to see. I mean, people have been saying on the chat that the difference has been the internet, the echo chamber, the sheer ability to shout to a large amount of people, but not actually, you're just shouting. It's I mean, at the end of the day, this conversation is just a conversation. It's a conversation online, and we appreciate you watching, but we know that we're not going to influence any change. We never will. But there are some people out there that genuinely do. And I think the tweet that I got as a reply to something as part of a conversation was the reaction to these people, or of these people, when they saw that they influenced change on the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. That must have given them a grin a mile wide. That's not the phrase I used, but you get the idea. When the filmmakers turned around and said, okay, we've listened, we'll be making some changes, the people that the Release the Snyder Cut crowd must have been rubbing their hands and just going, it does work.
Valid point, but you know, that film was onto a hiding for nothing anyway as soon as they announced it, because everybody went, sorry, what? You know, I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. You're not talking about a multi-million-dollar production like Game of Thrones. I know obviously it's millions of pounds making Sonic the Hedgehog, but it's a one-off. It hasn't got the same sort of hype. I know people obviously played the game and whatever else, but I'm sure most people looked at it and went, and then everybody who bitched about it will not go and see that film.
Okay. To kind of also tie in with something which Andrew Dickinson saying, what happens when HBO want to show the prequels? Do they have to expect backlash? I'm going to bring up a show which I know is very dear to your heart, which has seen a very similar backlash towards the actual filmmakers, or the showrunners, not necessarily the cast, but purely the way that the showrunners have treated the cast and the show. The Walking Dead. Do you see a parallel with what's happening with Game of Thrones with Walking Dead, or do you feel that The Walking Dead itself just is coming to a spluttering of the engine, as it were?
I mean, it could be the same. That's the thing. It just felt like, whereas with this, there's still little, with Game of Thrones and another bit, there's still little bits that you take out of it. You were saying, Leonard, that you quite enjoyed one of the dialogue pieces in this week's Game of Thrones. With The Walking Dead, it just felt like it fell off a cliff. It literally felt like they went, oh no, forget it. Get the crayons out. We'll do this. And the moment that happened was when they did CGI deer. That was the moment. And I think there are a lot of parallels between the way that The Walking Dead has been handled and what's happening with Game of Thrones and other franchises. It's difficult to get out of that rut, though. Once you're in that rut as a TV show, how do you get out of it? How do you come back again? That's the problem. And I mentioned Supernatural, and Supernatural had a really bad season 6, and I think season 7 was quite bad as well. But then they picked themselves up. They got back and they started to kick back in again. So it is possible. It just takes so much more effort.
Yeah, and a bit more talent. Like I say, I think the thing also that, we mentioned it earlier, that lingering doubt in the back of the head that they are now going to be signed on by Lucasfilm, that they are making a series of Star Wars films. And if you think Game of Thrones fans are fanatic, hey, we're talking third tier. Star Wars is a whole other ball game, and that's a whole level of fanaticism and fandom which you cannot afford to upset. It's just I think I think the reason why this feels like a conversation where we're not going to get into any answers is because we have still got one episode to go.
Yeah,
let's get tonight out of the way.
Yeah,
does it feel like let's get this out of the way, or do you feel when you're talking and looking online, are you feeling an anticipation, or have people felt so deflated already?
It's a good question. It's a good question. I think certainly from the people that I've seen talk about it, it does feel like, right, come on, let's it's the last one, thank goodness. Let's see what's going to happen here. I don't see that much goodwill towards it, as in, yes, right, it's the last episode. They've got to wrap it up. They've got to do something here. There's going to be something good going on here. They've got to. It feels very much like...
Is it an hour and a half? Is it 90 minutes?
Yeah, well, I mean, they say 90 minutes, but if you don't have adverts, it's not 90 minutes. You know, all of this, oh, they're motion picture length. They're not. They're really not. If you take the adverts out, it's about 1 hour 15, 1 hour 20. So, you know, it's not... We're not talking Avengers Endgame 3 hours. Yeah, I don't...
Sorry, the reason why I was laughing then, Michael P., do a special episode, Leonard, after the show tonight. That's 4:30 in the morning. Yeah. Sorry, that was a bit hard. No, I don't think so. I could give Caroline my login details. She'll be watching it. I think. Hello, cat. No, I will not be doing a special episode tonight. Okay, like I say, I think we can bring the conversation to a close because the series hasn't yet, and next week's episode is going to be a little bit interesting, or any conversation that myself and Mark have in regards to that. I want to try and keep the hangout very much about the conventions and the fandoms. I'm very curious to see how this will affect future shows going forward, because there is that dialogue between an audience, you know, but we are seeing this week that the audience has been empowered, and I think that's the thing that for me makes it an interesting conversation, especially in regards to conventions, because it's no longer a property and an audience. The audience is now it's make your own adventure. We are dictating the story, and that was great back when you were 12. When you bought those 79 pence paperbacks, they were great. You didn't go back and watch them again, and I doubt, or read them again, and I doubt you kind of really felt that you were being entertained.
But here's the thing as well. If, let's say, HBO turn around and go, okay, right, yeah, season 8 wasn't very good. We're going to redo it. Can you all get together and let us know what you want and put it into one script, and we'll redo it? Do you think that's going to work?
Not quite.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Let's kind of cover a couple of other topics that I know that we wanted to very quickly talk about, because we're now at 5 past the hour. I know you came in late, but still. Let's see if we can wrap things up. You've put on your list of some things that you want to talk about. FanFest and Walker Stalker. I find this interesting because you could actually come in from this from a whole bunch of angles. How Walker Stalker would come to a close because at the end of the day, the show is no longer being made. We could also talk about how Walker Stalker is consolidating its shows, certainly in the US, for whatever reason. What would you like to talk about, Mark?
Well, no, I was just going to say, I mean, obviously it is, you're right, a bigger subject, certainly in terms of them as a convention organizer. But obviously next weekend was going to be FanFest here in the UK. And then they cancelled it about 2 weeks ago. So we're pulling it. We can't bring the guests over that we want to bring over. They had like 6 guests, basically, who I think had all been over previously. So they pulled it. And I think then people had said, right, that's it. That's them done in the UK. Because there was a lot of bad blood after what happened with Walker Stalker here in the UK, with Jeffrey Dean Morgan pulling out at the last minute, and Norman Reedus not coming, and Andrew Lincoln not coming, and then lots of money being taken and no money being refunded. So I think there was a lot of people against that. And then they announced that they are coming back to the UK next year, and it is going to be a combined convention, Walkerstalker and FanFest. Now, I know that they've done that in the UK before, but we've not seen that. Sorry, they've done it in the US before, but we've not seen that in the UK before. So I'm curious as to how that's going to work here, because they seem to have underestimated how a convention can work in the UK compared to the US. So I'm interested to know, those people in the US who have been to the joint one, you know, where it was Walkerstalker and FanFest, how did that work? Did you find it interesting, or would you prefer it separate? And, you know, was it easy to get around? Did you think that it was good value for money? I just think it's one of those which it's going to be a real trial by fire for them. And I don't know how it's going to work. It's a curious one.
From the perspective of a fan that would be looking at the way that the shows or those particular conventions served a very niche audience, it kind of makes sense from my perspective to kind of then bring more fandoms together. You're serving more people, the energy gets more. I mean, that's the reason why I love going to San Diego. It's just so many different things to attract your attention, even if you didn't know it before. It's the way that it keeps someone like myself engaged. To just go to something which is just serving one fandom, I struggle with, because I did do Star Wars Celebration, and that ended up like swimming through treacle by day 2, because it is just so much. And I wanted, you know, I wanted a Star Trek kind of ice cream to just kind of take some of the, you know, the taste out of the mouth, just kind of break it up a bit. It's kind of what gets me off about these large shows where you have multiple fandoms being served. I think that's where FanFest will go. I think we will see the closure of Walkerstalker. Admittedly, that perspective I've just said is from a fan's perspective. Myself and Mark are also aware of a whole bunch of other politics that's going on in the background, in terms of finances, in terms of company organizations and personalities within those companies, which are which make these changes necessary. I think Stephen Amell will eventually come out as not necessarily the hero of the piece. So that's, you know, that's a whole other thing. It's just it's politics. It's, yeah, let's reclaim that word, politics. It's the nuts and bolts of stuff. It's the machinery in the background. That's the reason why these things happen. And as always, follow the money. And I think we're going to see that at CCI as well. There's some stuff that's starting to come out of the woodwork regarding various CCI personnel, which, if they don't shake it off this year, we may be going into San Diego Comic-Con, the 50th anniversary, without a president. That's a whole other ball game. Yeah, it's a sausage being made, as Michael P puts it. But I think the more people find out about how the sausage is being made, then maybe we'll get some organizations down the line that will be a little bit more transparent and come back round to the altruistic vibe. I think the reason why San Diego Comic-Con is still and remains the big daddy of them all is because it started as a non-profit, and it is a non-profit technically. And every once in a while you do get that vibe of the 8 people in a garage sat around dominoes and pulling this thing together bit by bit. That's the vibe. And I think more shows will, or the shows that will thrive will be the shows that cultivate that that atmosphere. There is an organization here in the UK that use the hashtag and the phrase "for the fans." Admittedly, they're starting to backfire on that one. But I think the conventions which actually embrace that ethos are the ones which will survive. We're getting close to the point where a lot of shows are starting to implode. And I think it's only the ones which embrace that core ethos are the ones that are going to survive. What do you think, Mark? Or do you feel that, no, at the end of the day, it's a business?
I mean, it is a business to a certain, once you're past a certain size, it's absolutely a business. CCI is beyond that, ReadPop is beyond that, and, Wizard World and a few others, Showmasters here in the UK. But then you're right, it can still implode. I wrote a review of Walker Stalker the first year it was here for you, Leonard, and put on there, this is a change. This feels like a revolution in terms of UK convention. And it did. You turned up and you went, okay, these guys know how to run a con. And then within 2 years, it had virtually collapsed really badly. It got really bad. Like, they'd forgotten everything. But, you saying about, embracing the fans. There's a wonderful convention here. Well, it's not a convention, it's a festival, Twin Peaks Festival here. It's run by one person and a handful of helpers. That's it. It's on two days, normally in October or November. It's run by a young lady called Lindsay, and she gets over great guests. And
have you been to the Friends one?
No.
I
don't have any friends. I don't have any friends.
I've been told that's very similar.
Yeah, see, that's the thing, is that if it is run by a one person and a couple, but they put it on, and it feels like you go in, you go, they've really tried here. And that's what I felt when I went to Twin Peaks the first time. I was like, wow, this is done by one person. This is incredible. How have you done this? Never mind about the guests. They had, I remember 2 years ago, they had like an open top tour bus going around London, showing people the locations where they filmed The Elephant Man. How many festivals, how many conventions would do something like that? And yet this is run by one person and a couple of helpers. That's it. It's
impressive.
Yeah.
It's impressive. Okay, we'll talk very quickly, or go down a couple of the comments that come in on the chat box, and then we'll start wrapping things up. Michael P, why do the supernatural conventions work so well? Because that's a fandom beyond itself. That's a whole ecosystem of its own. It's a whole other dimension. That's something else. Karma Savage, FanFest makes sense financially to be better as one con. I've attended Walker Stalker Con in Atlanta in October and then FanFest in November, and found FanFest wasn't so empty compared to Walker Stalker Atlanta. That's interesting. Omahasa, personally, in my opinion, if more conventions got exclusives, they'd do better at the end of the day. Most nerds are OCD collectors. I think if they create unique experiences, and we've talked about this for years on this hangout, it's not just a case of if you invite them, they will come. The reason why people talk about that Star Wars panel and the giving out the lightsabers and taking them to a concert is because it couldn't happen anywhere else, and it couldn't have happened any other way. Karma Savage, FanFest has only been hosted in Atlanta once. Hasn't been back in a couple of years. Makes sense for Walker Stalker to concentrate just Walker Stalker in Atlanta and let FanFest go. Fair enough. Andrew Dickinson, and then there was the Fame reunion a couple of months ago. I don't even remember that. I would have been there. That's Fame, man. This is where you start paying in sweat. Sorry, but that's the pinnacle of television back in the day. Okay, I'm showing my age now. So there we go. Right, this has been a show of open-ended conversations, and it has been a sponge of conversations. Usually we have some a target and an end line to get to, but we're in such a position right now where Game of Thrones, we've got one episode to go. we've got these shows and conventions which are yet to finish their development. We're just getting started with the convention season. We're not there yet. So there we go. Right. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. It's been an interesting episode. I've enjoyed just riffing and chatting. And Mark is always fun to listen to because he's the mountain. And it's great. Mark, if you'd like to tell everyone where people can find you online and what you're up to at the moment.
So I'm on Twitter, Mark_Searby, website marksearby.com. In terms of film reviews, every Friday afternoon here in the UK on Phoenix FM, you can get that on DAB. It's also available to stream online. And then Saturday and Sunday mornings on BBC Radio Suffolk. You can stream that online as well, and that's on the FM dial and everything else. Obviously, my Al Pacino book is on Amazon and all the places you can buy digital book, and the physical is available on Amazon as well. I think that's it. Maybe.
What's your next book project by any chance?
Listen, I'm just having fun still doing the Pacino stuff. It keeps coming around. It's weird how it keeps coming around.
Fair enough.
There's there's a couple more things that have yet to happen that hopefully will happen this year.
Yeah. For myself, my name's been Leonard Sultana. You can follow me on Twitter at Englishman s06e30, and of course you can keep an eye on stuff that we post on the Con Collective without an I, because that's the way Twitter works. Just search for the Con Collective and you'll find all of our posts. We are going to be putting a bunch of stuff up in 2 weeks' time from Comic Salopia. I think Dan is going to be bringing us stuff as well from Comic-Con Revolution, which is happening this weekend. It sounds like he's having a lot of fun there, actually. So lots of stuff going to be coming out of that. Next weekend is MCM Comic-Con London. It's unlikely I'm going down, but I think Mark may be attending for a little bit.
Yes, I will be there Friday and Sunday.
There you go. We're good to possibly get you on the Hangout next week to just talk about it, maybe, if possible.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm back in time on Sunday, yes.
That'd be cool. That'd be cool. If anything, because the MCM show, this is going to be an interesting one. MCM is starting to be a little bit more controlling of its social media, certainly on Facebook. It's gotten a very interesting guest lineup for this particular show in that it's focused very much on the media, very little on the comics, and it looks like the comics is going to be more dealt with in October. We could have talked about as well Rob Liefeld and getting that invite at London Film and Comic Con and how that affects the landscape here in the UK. Yeah, lots of stuff to talk about. So do go to the Convention Collective on Twitter and also on the website as well. You can also listen to me on a radio show that I do on HWD Hospital Radio, 6 o'clock in the evening here in the UK on Monday evenings. I'm going to be playing a bunch of panel recordings and interviews that I did at Portsmouth Comic Con and also at Oldham as well. So you can find that on some streaming, I know TuneIn, and also some digital radio stations. You can search for HWD Hospital Radio, and you can listen to me 6 o'clock on a Monday evening. My Little Slice of Nerd, which is the show that I do, and I have a lot of fun doing it. Going to be playing you an interview with Russell Mark Olson, who won the Best New Talent Award at the Tripwire Awards to Portsmouth Comic Con. Very good comics creator. So that's going to be played tomorrow. So do search for HWD Hospital Radio on your digital. Yeah, that's about it for me, and that's about it for the show. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Next week, like I say, we'll hopefully be bringing you a review of MCM Comic Con. Want to try and get Jamie Milner on. We keep saying that we want to try and get him on, but we'll see what happens from Wales Comic Con, because I do want to talk about a Wales Comic Con not in Wales. That I think is worth talking about. So there we go. Do take care. Enjoy the rest of your week, everybody. If you are watching a Game of Thrones tonight, take a shot every single time that Jon throws that face like he's about to turn into a puppy. She's my queen. She's my queen. Every single time he does that, take a shot. You'll be wankered by halfway through. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Say goodbye, Mark.
Bye.
No, it's goodbye, Mark.
Oh, bye, Mark.
You just...
No.